when an undefeated force of nature like Khamzat Chimaev finally meets a champion as relentless and unorthodox as Dricus du Plessis, the middleweight division shakes, and not just at UFC 319. Think explosive grappling meets endurance tested like never before. Chimaev burst into Chicago on August 16, 2025, carrying a record of total dominance, wrestling foes into submission before they even hit their stride. But whispers of health issues, recurring cancellations, and a potential early retirement shadow his every camp. Meanwhile, du Plessis comes in as reigning middleweight champion, undefeated in 9 UFC fights, battle-tested through 5-round wars with Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya, and Robert Whittaker. He's not just betting on grit. His training partner Mark Hulme predicts a finish inside 3 rounds, citing underrated wrestling as the secret weapon. And yes, fans are buzzing about Chimaev's stamina. Can his cardio hold up, or will the unknowns finally catch up to him? The stage is set. One man may crash into glory early, the other hoping to survive and cement legacy. High stakes, high drama. Watch closely.
Ты не удивился, вот он Стрикленда брал Whittaker, и сейчас, пожалуйста, Adesanya.
Ну, это он сейчас, его пик идет вперед, газует. Ну, можно сказать, плохая версия меня, но сейчас вернусь, сниму его. Для меня он намного удобнее, чем другие бойцы.
Khamzat Chimaev arrives in Chicago on August 16th as an undefeated juggernaut, a wrestler with a terrifying resume. He steamrolled his way through names like Usman and Whittaker, finishing them in early rounds with surgical efficiency. Analysts point out that he's more than just fast, he's relentless, bursting forward with a level of pressure few in the middleweight division can match. What sets him apart is how he overwhelms opponents in bursts. Powerful takedowns that force foes into submission or position. But here's the key. He doesn't do this over 5 rounds consistently. Critics warn his sprint-style grappling burns up his cardio before championship rounds, and he's never been tested deep into a 5-round fight. That's where the drama starts. Du Plessis isn't just planning to survive, he's banking on the gaps that emerge when Chimaev's gas tank runs dry. And that tactical chess match might be more explosive than the wrestling itself. Michael Bisping doesn't mince words. Quote, if he doesn't get him out of there in the first round of the second round, by round 3, round 4, and round 5, Khamzat Chimaev is going to look to be anywhere else but in the middle of the octagon once du Plessis begins to take over. Bisping emphasizes that Chimaev hasn't shown much ability to sustain his relentless gas tank beyond the early rounds. That inability to pace himself properly, he warns, could spell trouble in championship rounds. Analysts echo that concern. They point out that Chimaev tends to steamroll opponents early with explosive grappling, only to fade dramatically if the finish doesn't come quickly. In his 2 decision wins, he visibly slowed down, especially in late rounds, while his opponents began to assert more control, forcing him into a grinding pace he's unaccustomed to. Suddenly, du Plessis' strategy becomes clearer. Endure the early storm and capitalize when Chimaev's gas tank runs thin. That's the window where the champion's experience and cardio could turn the tide, and that's where the fight truly begins for du Plessis. The tension rises as we head to the next phase, how du Plessis plans to weaponize his own strengths. Dricus du Plessis isn't just an awkward striker who surprises critics with every fight. He brings an underrated internal strength that few see coming. Known for what looks like clumsy, herky-jerky movement out of an orthodox stance, he's intentionally mechanical, built for constant forward pressure, high-volume strikes, and explosive level changes the moment an opponent begins to shell up. His diving double legs may not look polished, but they're powerful, more like rugby tackles than clean collegiate shots, pulling into grappling dominance on the ground. This untidy style hides a real strategy. Once on top, du Plessis chains submissions, guillotines, Darcy variations, tight control, and mixes in short, controlled ground and pound to open finishing opportunities. His physical strength turns sloppy technique into deadly effectiveness, especially against opponents who underestimate him. Then there's the bold prediction from his close friend and training partner, Mark Hulme. Hulme publicly backed du Plessis to finish Khamzat Chimaev in under 3 rounds at UFC 319, citing wrestling as the hidden edge. Quote, I don't think people have seen the extent of Dricus' wrestling, and if people think Khamzat is the guy to wrestle, he might just hold him off and shove his head up his ass. In short, behind the unpolished facade lies elite grappling, iron lungs, and a relentless engine. Dricus du Plessis' secret weapon that could rewrite predictions and blow up expectations before the fight even hits round 3. Khamzat Chimaev's journey to UFC 319 has been far from smooth, marred by illness, fight cancellations, and swirling doubts about his reliability. One of the most dramatic examples came in June 2024. Chimaev was pulled from the main event in Saudi Arabia just days before fighting Robert Whittaker after suffering a violent illness requiring multiple hospitalizations. His manager later confirmed the illness persisted through training camp and made it impossible for him to step into the octagon. As his team scrambled for answers, UFC President Dana White publicly expressed frustration that such crises seemed to accompany Chimaev whenever he neared a major fight. In addition to health setbacks, visa complications have added to the uncertainty. Rumors circulated that his friendship with Chechen political figures and weight miss issues hindered his ability to compete in the US, though Chimaev has denied these claims, stating he could fight in America when needed and that visa delays stemmed more from timing than bans. It's no surprise that Dricus du Plessis has seized on this to cast doubt. In social media posts, he contrasted his steady activity, 6 fights in the last 2.5 years, with Chimaev's 3 bouts and several withdrawals, subtly questioning whether the Chimaev fight was ever even officially signed. To top it off, Caio Borralho has publicly accepted the role of UFC 319 backup fighter for du Plessis, fueling fan speculation about a possible curse or even another pullout. All this drama raises a major question. Does it give du Plessis a psychological edge even before the first punch is thrown? Insults and psychological warfare have become nearly as big as grappling in the lead-up to UFC 319. Dricus du Plessis didn't hold back when joking about Chimaev's health history, claiming the contender needed to wear a shirt before catching another cold, referencing the frequent illnesses and cancellations that have followed Chimaev's camp. After the promotion confirmed a backup fighter for UFC 319, du Plessis quipped that maybe he'd end up fighting the standby instead, another subtle barb on Chimaev's reliability. On Reddit, fans have been ripping into Chimaev's immune struggles too. One user bluntly posted, "He has a weakened immune system from long-term COVID and can't train as much due to staph." Another added, "Dricus by better immune system," mocking the hype around Chimaev being unstoppable. That phrase has even become a meme among du Plessis supporters, used in reaction posts and comment sections to ridicule. Meanwhile, some Redditors predict du Plessis will weather early pressure and pull off the title defense. I personally think DDP will win the fight, which is based off not seeing DDP be controlled or manhandled like Khamzat does to his opponents. If we see Khamzat gas himself early, it's going to be a long night for him. This trash talk zone isn't just entertainment. It's a strategic pressure cooker. Du Plessis aims to undermine Chimaev's confidence, shift mental momentum, and maybe even plant doubt before they step into the cage. And as fans feed into it with memes and takes, the hype machine only turns louder. The analysts say it all comes down to performance under pressure. And if the talk gets inside someone's head, it could change everything. Dricus du Plessis enters UFC 319 with a rare resume, multiple full-length championship fights under his belt, and victories to back it up. He captured the 185-pound title by splitting with Sean Strickland at UFC 297 in January 2024 and defended against Adesanya via submission in the 4th round at UFC 305. Then, at UFC 312 in February 2025, he dismantled Strickland again over all 5 rounds, earning a unanimous decision with scores of 50-45, 50-45, and 49-46 after breaking his opponent's nose mid-bout. That kind of championship medal, guarded through pushback and chaos, brings a huge advantage in mentally demanding title fights across separate venues and different styles. Grinding decisions, explosive submissions, du Plessis proves he thrives whether in attrition or crisis. His endurance, refined by deep championship rounds, makes him uniquely battle-tested for UFC 319's 5-round endurance chess match. Then there's Reinier de Ridder, watching from the sidelines, waiting on the winner. He recently called Chimaev's style easier to prepare for. "I can bring Dagestanis and Chechens who wrestle pretty similar to Khamzat. He boxes clean, his style is more predictable, not as weird as du Plessis," he said, underscoring how Chimaev's wrestling-heavy approach follows a template, while du Plessis' unpredictable shifting style is harder to replicate in training. So when fatigue sets in and championship pressure builds, who truly has the edge? Du Plessis has proven he can survive and even dominate 5 rounds. Chimaev has the earlier explosiveness. In that final grind, experience and adaptability could be the difference between a champion being forged or a legacy slipping away. Few voices in MMA carry more weight than Darren Till's, and he's making no secret of where he stands. I think Khamzat will beat him inside 2 rounds. Khamzat trains like a beast, Till said, doubling down on his conviction that Khamzat wins this fight swiftly. With first-hand experience in the division and an outright distaste for du Plessis, wrapped in respect, Till sees Khamzat's pace and grappling is too overwhelming to endure beyond the opening rounds. But not everyone shares that blink or you'll miss it outlook. Former champion Robert Whittaker warns it's a high-risk gamble for Khamzat. He'll get Dricus to the mat, but if he doesn't finish him there, I find it hard for him to win. The longer the fight goes, Dricus is more favorable. Whittaker leans towards Dricus in a fight that drags into championship rounds and calls the matchup tricky for the challenger.
He simply believes Dricus thrives in 5-round wars, so it comes down to one pivotal variable: the clock. Chimaev's explosive first 2 rounds might decide everything, or Dricus could outlast the storm and cement his legacy as the fighter who survives Khamzat the Blitz. Here's what the experts agree on. If Chimaev finishes fast, he becomes champion, but if Dricus weathers the storm and takes the fight deep, he cements his legacy. That's the crux of UFC 319, and the reason everyone is glued to their screen on August 16th. Israel Adesanya predicts chaos ahead, but if Chimaev wins, it'll be inside the first 2 rounds. Otherwise, Dricus stands tall in the championship rounds. Shar Magomedov goes further, hinting at a likely steamroll finish, a moment of silence for Dricus after Chimaev unleashes his power. Meanwhile, Robert Whittaker, who knows Chimaev firsthand, warns that if the takedown isn't a finish, Dricus becomes the favorite as the rounds go on. On the betting lines, Chimaev leads as the favorite around -185 to -190, reflecting his first-round finish reputation, while Dricus sits as the underdog, approximately +160, a nod to his endurance edge in longer fights. When the bell rings, one man may crash into glory early. The other hopes to survive and prove that stamina and strategy win titles. Who stays standing when the dust settles? Drop your predictions below. Who's walking away champion? Can Chimaev land the early storm, or will Dricus weather the pressure and rewrite history? I'll be reading every theory.